Hi, everyone. I'd like to introduce you to Marius Krebs, our guest today. Marius, can you just say a little word and introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me on the show, first of all. So I'm Marius. Or some might know me for challenging Brian Johnson to age slower for less money. In particular, I tried to I spent actually $10,000 to beat his best pace of aging. And with my very first result, my first Dunenin pace, I got to 0.72. But after that, I failed miserably at getting a better pace of aging. Unfortunately, but along the way, this was a journey of roundabout 10 months. I learned a lot, ramped myself up in the space of biohacking, and that's where some of your viewers and you, I guess, also know me from. I posted on YouTube about that journey.
Great. We will talk about more details about your journey. Can you just tell us more about how you came into the longevity field, why you started to focus on longevity?
Sure. That's actually much longer ago. Back in 2018, I read Dr. Sinclair's book, Lifespan, which for me back then changed my view on biohacking, so to say. I didn't really know of the word biohacking before, and also longevity was, when I was little, I always wanted to be an adventurer and explorer, and discovering the fountain of youth was kind of, sounded like an adventure to me. And because I'm a naturally very curious person, curiosity kind of drives my actions, I would like to play an infinite game if that's possible. So once David Sinclair painted this vision in his book, it kind of clicked for me. I was like, okay, there's something I can be passionate about. If it really might be possible that within our lifetime we can reverse the aging process, then great. I'm all for it, and I want to build something in this space. Reason why I went with YouTube then, though, is because I did a lot of research, and back then I found that most of the people working in that space, in my job back then, I was working with many startups as well with particular healthcare and life sciences startups, and a lot of them had a hard time selling stuff because people had a big problem with trusting them. So my approach was to build a community first, and that's why I then said, okay, I have to do something on YouTube. And this is more or less how I got into the game, into the game of longevity, so to say. I was always a little bit nerdy about optimizing myself, primarily in my 20s, optimizing my free time, optimizing my pleasures. So I very much led a life of and enjoyed it greatly, of course. But that didn't give me a lasting fulfillment, so to say. And that's why I, at one point, was looking for something in a different direction for more purpose in my life around my mid-20s. And little did I know that with being 27 years old, I got the book of Dr. David Sinclair. I mean, he's not the most popular person anymore, but still his book, I think, is still a good book, and it painted a really nice picture that got me, and I guess probably a lot of other people, very hyped about the field.
Yeah, likewise. I think we discussed this before we were on air, live on air. That book had a big impact on me as well, and I'm sure it did on a lot of individuals, especially given the number of copies he has sold. There's a lot of nuggets I want to explore further in what you said, especially about your purpose, but we'll get to that in a little bit. I was curious about if your longevity goals have changed now that your wife and you are expecting a child.
Well, have my goals changed? That's a good question. I don't think so. The goals are still very much the same. And my overall goal is to be able to extend life or not extend life. My goal is to actually extend my health span so that I can keep doing the same things that I'm doing now. I want to climb the same mountains. I want to do the same sports. I want to raise my kids and win until they are grown up and will beat me, probably. And I kind of, I don't cling onto life. If a bus hits me, that's it. Yeah. Death can happen every day, every second. But but that said, in my opinion, we always should ask ourselves what's in our control. And I think with the knowledge that we gained in the last couple of decades, but also with ancient knowledge out there, there's so much more that's in our control that we don't know of, or mostly we're not aware of. And I think it's kind of my mission to really see, okay, hey, what can I push forward to live a good life every day, though? No? And that optimally for the longest time possible. But yeah, if it's not like that, it won't destroy my world today.
Right. Okay. This is very important to you, but it's not everything, right? You realize there's other things that are important in life.
Yeah. If you cannot take pleasure or enjoy your life at the moment right now, at the present moment, then what purpose is there to life?
Exactly. That's the point. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Well said.
get. Yeah.
Okay. So I think I wanted to kind of get an idea of your routine when you achieved your epigenetic age score of 0.72, and even now, what your routine looks like in terms of your diet, your exercise, your sleep habits, and also any supplements you may be taking. What does your diet look like?
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll have to split that into two parts. Like one is when I eat, and the other is what I eat.
Yeah.
And basically, when I eat is mentioned very quickly. I try to skip dinner. I used to do intermittent fasting very strictly for 3 years or so, but since half a year or so, I don't do it anymore. And if I'm having dinner every now and then, I'm having dinner every now and then. I try to skip it though, and if I eat something at night, I eat something light. Simple reason being here is I sleep much better. It shows in my data straight away. If I don't eat at night, it's like at least 20% my markers are better. Resting heart rate goes down, HRV goes up. It's as simple as that. And that means I recover better as well. So optimally, I'll have the last snack or so at like 3, 4 p.m. Sometimes I'll sit down with my family because they're having dinner, and then, I don't know, eat like a piece of bread or so. But that's it.
That's 5 to 6 hours before bedtime, I presume.
Yeah, it depends when we're having dinner. But minimum 3 hours. On most days, it's more like 6 to 8 hours before bedtime.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So then the question is, what do I eat? And that starts with shopping for food. I try to prep food where possible. Throughout the challenge, I had a very strict diet, and I can tell you our little one wasn't very fond of it. Eating broccoli and cauliflower and lentils most days of the week for lunch. But I kept mixing that up with little variations as well, but wanted to keep it consistent for the challenge. Now we're doing it a little bit different. We're mixing things up. Still, you could say we always shop for different kinds of the same things, so to say. We always try to include like a kind of legume. So this could be lentils in all colors and shapes, or beans in different colors or shapes. Then we try to buy seasonal vegetables. And we do that on our weekly grocery market. We're very lucky that close to our home we have like a fantastic farmers market that has amazing food, and you can tell by just looking at the vegetables. They look different, they smell different, and they taste different as well. And if we'd be moving from here, I'd certainly miss that market. Let me tell you so much. And then then we also get some kind of carb, although I try to keep that on a low end as possible for lunch. Mostly it's like potatoes, and then of course from the legumes there's carbs in there as well. For me personally, I try to avoid rice because especially when I eat it for lunch, rice spikes my blood sugar and I have an immense amount of brain fog the second half of the day, although I like rice very much, I must say. Yeah. And so then the question is, when you have seasonal vegetables, you have your legumes in place, your carbs, what else am I doing for protein? And this could be mostly plant protein, but we do like once or twice a week, we eat lean cuts of meat or some fish. So largely this could be described as a Mediterranean diet. The only change from that is then maybe our breakfast, which is very consistently the same. And that is a self-mixed muesli base, so to say, that's pretty protein rich due to the seeds, and also have some soybean flakes in there. And most of all, it has no sugar. And I tried to go with old grains. So like not old in the sense that they're like long on the shelf, but they're not the newer grains like wheat, for example. Because the old grains and whole grains have a lot more of it traditional nutritional value. My mother actually, she bought a little machine. It's like a in-house mill where you can get the whole grains, literally the whole grains, and it will mill it for you into oats, like flakes you get from oats.
Okay.
And if you do that freshly, it preserves most of the nutrients that are in there. Because if it's done in an industrial setting, a lot of it is lost over time when the grain is like split. I want to get one of those, but they're like very expensive. And then we top this muesli with, usually soak that in hot water, and we top that muesli with a mix of creatine, collagen, and glycine, which gives it a natural sweetening as well. We top fruits on it and add some plant-based yogurt and some form of nut butter. And that's our little treat in the morning. Very delicious. And then in between, I snack on nuts.
Okay, so it sounds like you said it's a plant-based, mostly Mediterranean type diet. And I'm curious, you live in Germany. How did you grow up? What kind of diet did you grow up on? And how has transitioning to a legume-based diet make you feel? How does that make you feel? I have a European background as well, and I find personally it's not something that I can tolerate to high levels, eating legumes, lentils, although I would like to eat them more. My body just doesn't agree with it, to put it lightly, I guess.
Because of the bloating?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had that for a long time as well. I have two fixes for that. First of all, you need to eat a lot of legumes for a long time, and your belly will get adjusted. And then the second one is I soak them in water and change the water after soaking them for 24 hours twice a day and let them sprout. So this makes them much more digestible. And then I have a pressure cooker, an Instant Pot at home here, and I cook my legumes in the Instant Pot after they've sprouted a little bit, and then I can just eat them. I get like rarely any bloating. I get worse bloating from like broccoli and cauliflower.
Yeah. I should try that. I've tried soaking them, but I haven't changed the water. Usually it's in the same water overnight. And but I have also bought sprouted lentils and beans, and I didn't find much of an effect. But I think you're right. The key is, to be exposed to it consistently, and that will help as well. I don't tolerate them well, and I noticed that my 3-year-old son does not tolerate the legumes well, especially lentils. He was at a daycare for a few months led by an Indian lady, and so she would often make lentils and beans, and the poor little guy, he had a disturbed stomach for a long time. So I think part of it is adjustment, but part of it is how you prepare them as well. So I was just curious how that worked for you.
The Instant Pot was a game changer as well on that one.
Yeah.
So, growing up, I didn't eat a lot of legumes, to be honest. But I have to give big shout out and thanks to my mother that she made sure most of my early life that we ate good things. She always cooked fresh and very tasty. I mean, it wasn't a biohacker's diet, and we'd have a lot of meat in our house. But that also we always tried to get from a butcher that we knew. And food was something that was very much cherished. There was very little processed and ready-made meals, but we'd get a pizza every 2 weeks or something like that. And so that really helped set the bar high, and also us grow up. So I have 2 siblings, grow up in a very nice environment. And then at the same time, she also taught me to cook early on by involving me in making the food. And this really created for me a great relationship to food because I love cooking. You asked for community previously, right? And I actually don't do that nowadays as much because a lot of my friends don't live here. But previously, I always loved inviting friends and creating a nice experience with some nice dinner or lunch or whatever, even just breakfast and cooking nice things. Was a very big pleasure for me, or is still, when I can be a good host. And being a good host to me means also sharing good food.
Yeah. I mean, bonding over food is important, and it's a great way to do it. So that's great. Okay, let's transition over to exercise. Can you talk about your exercise routine? How do you do strength training? Do you train your VO2 max, cardiovascular? And do you also focus on balance and stability?
Yeah. So short answer, yes, all 3. Last year, I was more also throughout the challenge, I was more focusing on building strength and more muscle, which worked. I continuously got stronger, although I didn't gain so much muscle mass according to my scale, but you never know how precise they are. So to sum it up briefly, this year I'm much more focusing on training my VO2 max. Still, my exercise protocol is probably the thing that changed the least post this $10,000 blueprint challenge against Brian Johnson, so to say. I do between 5 to 6 times a week exercise. I'm training for a triathlon this year, henceforth also the focus on VO2 max. And so I'll try to do now 2 extended cardio sessions a week currently in zone 2. Those would be around an hour. I now have a bike here that I just recently got, and it could be either swimming, bike, or going for a run, depending on the time that I can carve out and the weather, obviously. Then I try to do one at medium capacity, 1 cardio session. So that means around 80 to 85% of my maximum heart rate. And that will be half an hour. And mostly is running. And then I try to do 1 HIIT session. So that tries to get around 10 minutes at close to maximum heart rate if I can. So in zone 5. And there will be a session of around about half an hour. Sometimes I do the 4x4. Sometimes I do like 45-second sprints with 15 seconds rest. Depends a little bit on the time. I take it that day. Sometimes I put it on top of a workout, depends on the workout that I did, mostly strength then. And that leads me to the last part, and then strength training twice a week, where I do one day upper body and one day lower body. Although lately I've been thinking to change that up a little bit more into a mixed one and more whole body movements and less of isolated training. I do mostly body weight exercises, although I do have a body weight vest as well as one barbell or dumbbell that can be up to 24 kilograms. And so that's basically the workout protocol. But then for flexibility, stability, and mobility, I do yoga every morning, 15 to 30 minutes usually. And it's usually of a more powerful kind of yoga. And this, because sometimes, it's not possible to squeeze in a workout. Not often. I get it in pretty consistently most days. But I want to start the day by having meditated and having done something to be ready to sit at a desk for most of my time throughout the day. And if I got those two things in, meditation and yoga, perfect. Today can start.
That's dedication. That's good for you for dedicating that time. That's a substantial part of your day. Yeah, but it's obviously vital. It's essential. What do you use to track?
Yeah, so mostly I use my Apple Watch and just use the fitness app in our Apple Fitness. And then I have, that's not here, I have a Morpheus chest strap, which has become very useful for my cardio workouts. Because first of all, it's very precise heart rate tracker, and it gives you a recovery score. And this is not an ad. I don't get paid from them. It gives you a recovery score every morning, where you have to sit down or lie down pretty much within the first 10 minutes after getting up, and it measures your HRV. And then it provides you custom training zones and how much time in a given week you should spend in those different training zones for optimal progress. And it does update that on a daily basis. So if your recovery is low, it will recommend that for example, your recovery workout heart rate zone is much lower than the heart rate zone would be when you had a great recovery score. Yeah. And this has been working very well. My VO2 max has increased, and my goal would be to get it to 60. I'm close to 50 at the moment. It's been lacking over the last until a month ago, but the goal would be 60 this year. That would be amazing.
Fantastic. I mean, that's pretty elite, right? Getting into 60. So
let's see. I have to enter the elite category. I was there once, but I left it.
Oh, really? Okay. So it's definitely
not at 60. I was like the highest I got was like 55, something like that. But it's weird, like I just measured most of the time through the Apple Watch, and that's an estimate. It's calculated, and I generally find that when you do more cardio, it just also tends to get higher over time, which makes sense. But then I'm wondering how much the frequency plays into that estimate, as well as it's also always off to my Cooper tests. When I do Cooper tests, and I do them like every now and then, I always score much better on a Cooper test.
That's a test for VO2 max, obviously, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you 12 minutes, you run as fast and as far as you can. And then by the distance, you can very secure the distance that you covered. You can very much very securely actually relate it to a VO2 max level at your age and gender. And for me, I consistently score close to like 3 kilometers within 12 minutes. And that usually translates to like 55.
Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, we're getting. I want to cover a couple more topics in the last 8 or 10 minutes, especially I think sleep and supplements. Maybe we could talk about supplements and then a little bit about your testing protocol. I think that'd be something that the audience would like to hear. So, what do you use for supplements right now? You mentioned collagen, you mentioned creatine, you mentioned glycine. Anything else?
Yeah. So my current stack has changed into the stack that I had previously. I'm trying to thin out supplements just to see what I can drop off without any significant changes. And then my stack is mostly optimized to really help me with blood cholesterol and optimizing my cholesterol levels, or specifically lipoproteins, so to say. And that is because I discovered that I have genetically high lipoprotein A, and I want to minimize the risk of cardiovascular disease in age, which comes inherently with high lipoprotein A. And for that, I'm not taking any medication. I'm trying to go naturally as of now. So I take nattokinase, around 8 to 10,000 FU. I take red yeast rice. I take black garlic extract, and yeah, and then coenzyme Q10. I have a vitamin B complex because I don't eat that much meat, but I only take that every other day, because else it showed in my last blood test that B6, for example, was way too high. So trying to now slow that down a little bit. I take magnesium in the evening, as well as L-theanine for sleep. That works magic, and I really enjoy the more vivid dreams I get from the L-theanine. And then I also take some zinc, and that's about it. I tried cycling ashwagandha as well as boron to increase my testosterone levels specifically, and that worked. I really tried to get my SHGB lower though, and I don't know why it remains high. It doesn't matter what I do, it remains incredibly high. It's always one of the markers that's out of line. Very similar to Brian Johnson, by the way. It's like, was it like 0.7 or 7.2, something like that? And that's pretty much the whole list.
So I'm curious, how have your protocol for lipids worked for your LP little a? Because those are supplements that have been shown to work to decrease ApoB and LDL and total cholesterol. But I'm curious what kind of effect it's had on your LP little a.
I just retested it once last November, I believe, and it even went up a little bit, but just tiny bit. But as you said, ApoB and the other cholesterol markers, they kind of keep low. I'm still trying to lead it back to what I'm doing currently. They're not very high, so especially ApoB. They could be lower though, and I'm thinking to consider maybe some medication like Nustendi, maybe even a statin, but I want to avoid medication as far as possible. So one of the supplements that I'm thinking to include is berberine, which works very similar to statin. I that's what I read, at least. No, but still have to get that or try that soon, and then we'll see.
Yeah, I'm not very well versed in the literature with LP little a, but in general, they say that it's, like you mentioned, genetically driven, and you can't change too much your levels. But then I've heard case studies where through diet and other interventions, people can lower their LP little a even though they are genetically predisposed to have it higher. So if I come across anything, I'll definitely send it your way. So in the last few minutes, I'd like to explore a pretty big topic, but testing. So your general testing paradigm for longevity. You mentioned You obviously do look at your epigenetic age. You do blood testing. How frequently do you do this, and what kind of tests do you do within those realms?
Yeah. So blood tests I want to do every 3 months this year. That
What do
those
you
are
what do you put in that panel?
what do I include in that panel? As much as I can get, except of the very expensive ones. I mean, you can go super crazy on blood panels, but my list would be too long to name here. It's, I think, by now 66 markers, something like that.
Markers? Wow.
I try to get a full panel from just a regular blood panel over to B vitamins, over to vitamin D. Let me pull up my latest blood test. Then the blood glucose levels with HbA1c.
CBC, I'm guessing, complete blood count, and
Yeah,
lipid
exactly.
count. Do you calculate your pheno age?
I don't. No,
Based on 9 markers from your blood test, you can calculate your pheno age.
I did that once. By the way, if you have any tip, one thing that's also consistently low is my hemoglobin as well as my erythrocytes. Erythrocytes.
Blood cells,
And
yeah.
and I don't know how I can get that up. I tried figuring it out, but this is something that skipped my.
Yeah, usually with cardiovascular exercise and cardiovascular health, that it can increase as well. But
Yeah.
I'm not a physician, so I can't really guide you too much there. But it's interesting.
And then, I mean, I try to get the omega-3 panel if I can, as well as the full cholesterol level with ApoB. Then, yeah, liver markers, kidney markers, and yeah.
And you do that through which means? Do you do that direct to consumer testing, or do you actually go in for a blood draw, private company, or through?
Yeah, I do that through Aware. I tried all different kinds of blood test providers over the last year, from trying to go very hacky and optimize for cost by getting everything through our general practitioner and then find justifications for the insurance. But there was so much of a pain that, and in the end, bills chasing me because they send it to different kind of labs, and then the labs don't know what bill has been paid. And yeah, not gonna tell the whole story, but it's a pain. Did a whole video on that one. And then I tried with the longevity clinic, which was great service and insights. Probably the most insights I got on as a amateur, so to say, learning about different blood markers. But now I found a blood testing startup, Aware, and they're here in Germany, Austria, and the Netherlands, but they're expanding in Europe. And they provide an in-app experience. They have like local partners in most cities in Germany. We can just go book an appointment, and it takes 5 minutes and you're out. And then they also have good pricing compared to regular direct-to-consumer labs. And one of the nicest things is the app, I would say, because it really guides you through what the markers mean, what it can help with improving the markers if they're too low or too high. And I've been using it for like now a couple of months, and it gets better. Like you see it. They're a startup. They're continuously adding new features, and I need to mention this, I guess. I'm also working together with them on that. They don't sponsor me, but we work together on collaborations. Yeah.
Okay, and they're mostly in Europe, like you said, right?
Yeah, mostly in Europe.
Okay, and what about your epigenetic testing? How often do you do that?
So I'm not sure how often I will do it anymore because it's so expensive. And yeah, before we started the podcast, I have my latest pace of aging test here that I will do soon. The thing is, so I got this one as a replacement test for the last test that failed. I did in November. After I received this bad result of 0.9, I wanted to retest and just see if that might have been like a result that just jumped out of line, so to say.
Outlier, yeah.
Outlier. And I retested, I sent it in, and then the result didn't arrive in the usual time frame. I messaged them many times, and then they told me it failed and got a retest. It was a big headache. In the end, I waited 4 months after doing the test to get for nothing and get a replacement. It's really a pain to procure them here in Europe, and they're incredibly expensive now with the price change as well. And then, I mean, you get a bunch of markers and reports, but even the old report, I did the True Age Complete once, this is like half a book you need to go through and then do your own research. And in the end, it's all very, in my honest opinion, very wishy-washy. Yeah, we might see some increases if you do that, or this might influence it a little bit like that, but you don't get any direct feedback that's actionable, in my opinion. Yeah. And you always then need to work with your blood test results and then make a guesstimate about what actually went wrong and how you're going to recheck that. And optimally, then you would do these very frequently. And if you have a lot of money, then be my guest. I would probably do them very frequently, because then you get like once a month or even every 2 weeks, because then you get a very good insight of the developments over time. But I'm not willing, even if I could, to spend, what is it, 600, 700, 800 euros on a test that in the end doesn't give me really clear insight into what I need to change or should change. And yeah, for that, I hope they get better. I hope there will be a European provider as well that does something similar or even better. And then I would probably do them as well.
Yeah.
Again.
There is utility in epigenetic testing. I think it's essentially a buffet of data. Essentially, it gives you a nice broad overview. But the problem is it's not direct data, right? And it's not direct data that you can get from blood biomarkers. So I think that they do have a lot of issues with their testing. But I think in general we can say that the testing is good in the sense that it encourages people to focus on their health more than just I'm going to work out and eat well. You're getting specific, you're getting personalized, and this type of testing helps. But I agree, there's cheaper and maybe even better ways to find those things out, how to personalize your diet and other routines.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I'm 100% on your side. Like epigenetic testing in itself has a lot of value if you know how to interpret the results and can dig into the results. I know how this is composed. Is the Dudenin pace. It's great. It has like really a lot of different epigenetic markers that are combined and that show different progresses of your age. But you don't really get to know those individual markers, at least from what the tests I did. And then again, this can't really be led back to, at least from a consumer test like this one, to what you need to do. Easily, at least. For the first test that I received, which was the more comprehensive picture for back then, it took me a week to dig through the results, to really understand what's going on, watch lectures from True Diagnostics on YouTube, and just get a grasp on what I need to do to improve it. And then I miserably failed, although I obviously tried to do everything right. And in the end, I led it back, to mostly stress, I would say, which is more wishy-washy then again.
Right, concrete, yeah. Any other tests that you do that in terms of longevity? Yeah, I'm sure you do a lot, but anything else that you want to highlight?
The standard fitness tests, mainly those from ACSM. The Cooper test is one. So tests on flexibility, just to see how I'm doing, grip strength. Every now and then I try to hang in the bar for as long as possible, see how long I can hang there.
How long has been lately? What's your record?
So a little bit over 2 minutes. Like I have a feeling I could hang a little bit longer, but it hurts, and then I stop. 3 minutes would be nice. Or like the maximum amount of pull-ups and so on.
That's rock climber level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah.
3 minutes is a rock climber level.
I don't know. I just assume it is, right? That's pretty good grip strength.
Yeah, my lower arms are not that big. When you see those guys doing the arm wrestling, they have massive
Big forearms.
arms.
Yeah.
And they train them specifically.
Yeah, they do, right? It helps a lot in arm wrestling. Yeah. You see how they're disproportionate, like Popeye.
Yeah. I did one other test, and that is a full genome sequencing. There, I mean, you're an expert. You probably know how to handle that data. I've got it through an app which provided me some useful insights, and I downloaded the file. I tried to slice it and dice it myself. It would probably take me like a couple of weeks to really dig into that and understand it, understand how I use the software also to use it, and then find the genes that I'm interested in. Yeah, it's a time issue mostly, but I guess that data at least stays very static throughout my life. So at one point I will have the time and I will dive in very deep.
What company did you use again for that?
I'm sorry?
What company did you?
It's a company from Czechoslovakia called Macron. They're still very small, but amazing founders. And I did it through them because they process, first of all, in a European lab in Poland. And it stays completely anonymous. And they abide by European data privacy laws, which for me was very important. Because they're not the cheapest, but what a lot of companies like, for example, 23andMe also do, or some of the other more popular providers, is that you basically, they give you a cheap gene test, but two things happen. First of all, they send it off to a Chinese lab to offer those competitive prices. And even though that might be handed in anonymous, you never know. We didn't know what the NSA saves. We won't know what the what the Chinese government can save and know. And so I'd rather not do it that way if I can control it. And then the second thing is a lot of those companies let you sign off the right to use your data for their purposes. And this is like my genetic blueprint. I'm not gonna sign that off to some company for them to use as they want.
Yeah. That's one of the big issues right now with 23andMe, the bankruptcy and selling all that data. But yeah, I think obviously I am biased, but I do think there's a lot of utility in genetic testing, especially in terms of your genetic predisposition to disease and also premature death. But the companies aren't necessarily there yet in terms of providing that utility and high quality data, at least the direct to consumer companies in general. But there are some good ones that are popping up. So I think the utility is there and it's going to be there moving forward. So I'd like to leave you with a couple of things. Can you tell us who you follow in the longevity space? What are the experts that you like to listen to or watch videos from? In terms of designing your own interventions?
So prior to Brian Johnson, I started my longevity journey with Dr. Brad Stanfield. And I think he does really great research on his videos and provides a very clear communication, the latest research paper, so to say. Then I like Sim Lan's content. He seems to be like an incredible deep source of knowledge that he's accumulated over the last 10 years.
If you want people to follow you, where can they find you? Where can they follow your journey? Where can they see more of your content?
Yeah, so mostly on YouTube. My YouTube is Marius Fountain of Youth, and then you'll just find me there. or you can visit my website at blueprint.fountain-of-youth.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I wish you and your wife, especially your wife, the best with the delivery. And I know the first few months with a newborn are going to be pretty intense. So, try to rest when you can, and hopefully you can keep as much as you can to your longevity routine. And hopefully we'll get to catch up again in several months or a year down the road.
Definitely. Thank you so much. That was a pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise. Take care, Marius. All the best.
Bye-bye.